When we think of bullying, we usually think of kids bullying kids. But how do we handle it when it happens to us adults? We'll get into it after I hit this music. Joining me this week is filmmaker Wade Simmons. Wade, thank you so much for coming on today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on.
I'm excited to hear your story fully. I mean, obviously I know a little bit of your story, but I don't get too many adults talking about adult bullying, which I know is just as prevalent as kids bullying kids. So before we get into it, tell us what you're doing at that time.
So I did have experience as being bullied as an adult. Actually, I was training for pro wrestling.
Awesome.
It was kind of like at a phase of my life when I was dealing with a rare vocal disorder called spasmodic dysphonia. Because I work in the funeral business full time. I went to school for both mortuary science and film, so I do both. But at that point in my life, I'm like was kind of struggling with this vocal disorder, and so I remember talking to my voice therapist, and she like, you might want to consider taking a break from the funeral business and like kind of focusing on doing some fun stuff. And so I was interested in making a documentary about pro wrestling.
Okay.
So I ended up, after graduating film school, I decided, like, you know what? I'm gonna make my documentary. So I ended up reaching out to a gentleman by the name of Steve Boz, and he talked to me about wrestling, and I told him like I wrestled in high school, and so instead of him letting me make the documentary, he offered to train.
Oh, nice.
That was even greater. And so in the process of training, everybody was kind of nice when we first started, but then kind of over time as I trained, I kind of ran into a bit of a kind of a roadblock with a female wrestler, which is kind of odd because, again, I'm a man, you know what I'm saying? Like, and
Yeah.
so I end up having a bit of an issue with a female wrestler who kind of tried to bully me and stuff like that. And it was kind of annoying a little bit because I really
Sure.
didn't know how to really handle that.
Sure. So before we get into that story, tell us more about your disorder and what that actually is.
So spasmodic dysphonia basically was like whenever I got stressed, my voice it would strain really bad. I
Okay.
haven't I haven't really had as much of a problem with it in the last few years, but it was like really bad. Like if I was stressed really bad, like my voice would just I don't know if you're a Star Wars fan, but it was like Palpatine and then he had the voice as Darth Sidious. It's like I had one of those type things going on.
So I don't know much about that voice. So is it like does your voice get lower or like more like grainier or does
Yeah,
it get
it's
like
like
high pitched?
it's kind of more. No, it's like it's kind of strained really bad. I sound like an old man, kind of like it was
Okay.
very, and it was weird because like when I remember when I was working at the funeral home full time, and somebody called, and the lady when she came in, she said, "Oh my God, you a young man." She said, "I thought you was an old man."
I'm 46 years old and every now and then I teach martial arts for a living and sometimes my voice would crack. That's even more embarrassing too. It's like your voice cracks when you're trying to talk. The kids just make fun of you. But it's hilarious. With wrestling, how long were you training for when you started having this issue with this female wrestler?
This was maybe like 4 weeks later,
Okay. So
and it was a
what brought
very
that on? Yeah.
I don't know. It was like at first I noticed like, she was kind of making comments and then I'm like, not paying it any mind. But then it got really personal when I heard her, tell somebody that she was gonna make me quit. And I stood right there in the ring and I told her ain't nobody gonna make me quit. And so like I think that kind of made it a little more tense. And so then it ended up resulting into her getting in the ring. She stops the whole practice and then she starts kind of like, having me do these drills. And then she got in my face and like, you're going to hate me or whatever. But I noticed like after that, I was kind of being picked with a little bit. And then it kind of
Yeah.
trickled over to some of the other wrestlers. And so I kind of knew it was personal. Cause like I said, I wasn't there to try to, don't get me wrong. Like I'm a very friendly person, but I didn't get into it to like go to WWE or AEW and none of that stuff. I strictly got into it because it was a hobby. I wanted to make my documentary. It was fun, but
Yeah.
kind of dealing with that kind of made me a little uncomfortable. And so
Yeah.
that actually resulted to me just kind of avoiding being around that individual because again, as a man, I always had to keep in mind that's a female. So
Yeah.
I did my best to be as respectful as I can be.
Yeah. What was like well, first of all, was she a coach? Was she one of the trainers to help train you become a wrestler? Or
Well,
what gave her the authority to run you drills?
Well, she's been doing some pretty cool stuff in the industry already,
Okay.
and so I guess she was one of the trainers or whatever, but I think it's kinda one of those things where, like, when you're coming into somebody else's world and they think you don't belong there, sometimes, it happens more than people think, but like I said, as far as me, I'm one of them people that I do believe in standing up for myself, but again, in
Yeah.
this type of situation, this is a female, so
Yeah.
I couldn't really handle that situation the same way,
Yeah.
And like I said, it was kind of a bit of annoying because like, as a that to me is kind of childish, I get it, sometimes in sports, people, do things like that, but I always say when you're dealing with people, you never know where people come from. You never know what kind of day somebody's having. And so something like that could have easily, got out of hand, So what I did was I chose to kind of take the high road and be like, you know what? I'm just gonna stay away from this individual. And that's exactly what I did.
What was going on between you 2 when she made, like, the first comment?
I think more so because when I was wrestling, I was kind of struggling with some of the moves a little bit.
Okay.
Because again, look, I wrestled in high school. And so when you're coming from, that type of wrestling and stepping into pro wrestling, it's wrestling, but it's kind of two different things.
Yeah.
And so it's certain things that you can do in amateur wrestling that you probably wouldn't do in pro wrestling. And so
Yeah.
to me, my mindset is that like, if you are a teacher, then you have to be patient with people. And then
Yep.
me, I'm very outspoken. And so, I did speak up for myself when I needed to, but like I said, when it particularly came to this individual, I kept my distance because, again, I'm a man. And I'm gonna be honest. One of the reasons why I'm not gonna go into detail about everything, but there was some things that I noticed about this individual when it kind of came to some of like the black male wrestlers.
Yep.
And so I didn't really want no problems. Look, I'm just being real with you, man.
Yeah. So, do you remember what was said the first time that made you, like, stop and think, like, "Are you picking on me?" Or, like, what was, like, the
Oh yeah,
first comment?
it was like one time when I was we were training and they asked all of us to get in the ring and I overheard the comment being made, well, he don't know how to get in the ring or something. And then I'm like, this is around the time where like I'm not thinking nothing of it. But like I
Yeah.
said, when the statement was made, like I'm gonna make him quit, then that's when I kind of knew it was personal because right after that, the individual was talking about how she made somebody else quit.
Oh, so she was proud of it.
Yeah, and it's crazy because like I said, I give people the benefit of the doubt. I'm not a type of person that really try to have issues with people. I'm more
Yeah.
the kind of person that I try to get along with everybody, but sometimes it happens and I think sometimes in situations like that, when people have been doing something a while and they kind of get more established, sometimes they kind of, feel like they can push other people away. And like I said,
Yeah.
it doesn't just happen there. It happens on jobs. It happens, film industry, funeral service. Look, I've seen it in some of everything, but
Yeah.
that was like one time as an adult that I really experienced it. And like I said, it was kind of crazy because like it bothered me, but it's like at the same time I had to remember that this individual is a female, and so I couldn't have the same approach. I'm gonna be honest though, but I think there's a fine line between trying to make somebody better and just picking with somebody. I
Yeah.
think that people have to know the difference. And I only say that because of course in sports, yeah, people are tough or whatever, but at the same time, you have to understand that, you never know where people come from. And
Yeah.
so not everybody is the same. Because again, me being a person that comes from a background working in the funeral business, I see how picking with people could go south. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So to me, I was raised a little differently to where like I don't care what I'm doing. I believe in treating everybody right, and
Yep. And my point I was trying to get to with the WWE stuff, that was on TV. That's filmed for entertainment.
yeah.
And I'm saying this person took it a little too far because that's not like you guys were on MTV trying to make a television show.
No, I mean,
And this
again,
is
and some of the people that train with us are on TV wrestling.
okay.
Some of them are, but like you said, not everybody. Because again, I didn't get into it to. This was strictly a hobby for me.
Yep.
But I also think, one of the other issues, could have been because I think some of the other wrestlers, and it wasn't all of them because some of them were pretty cool, but I knew it was personal when it was one day we were at practice and one of the other wrestlers said something to me and I wasn't getting the move right. And I said something back to him. And I remember him saying, well, like, if you would have said that to the individual, she would have did this to you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I'm like, then now that let me know that it was personal.
Yeah.
But once I said my piece to the other individual, me and that individual, me and him, we didn't have any more problems. But with her, I stayed away from her.
So, was your experience with her more like was she just trying to shame you in front of everybody, like trying to embarrass you?
Yeah, like it was kind of that. And one of my best friends from high school, he actually trained with me, and he used to kind of tease me about it a little bit. But I'm like, and I told him, I said, like, you know what? Not trying to be funny, but like, I really don't really feel comfortable, going to practice like that. Like not when this individual's there because like I kind of sense that it may become a problem. And like I said, me, I'm always gonna try to be respectful. And
Yeah.
it's funny because, like I said, as a guy, some people it's a very weird situation because it's like if you do anything, you look weak. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like that's a girl. But then if you don't do anything, you still look like still look. So it's like I just like what it's not really worth for me going off on nobody or so I just kept my distance.
Yeah. Was there anything that you still can remember that's probably like one of the worst things she's done to you?
Well, to me, it was kinda trying to embarrass me in front of all the other people, you
Okay.
know? I think that's what really put the icing on the cake for me, and then, like, got in my face and told me, like, "You really gonna hate me," and I'm sitting there like you said, this is not MTV, this is not a show, this is real life, like, there's a time where I can understand if you want somebody to get better, you can pull them to the side or whatever, but, no, you don't do nobody like that, you know?
What does she even mean? Like you're not gonna like me? Like what was she trying to prove to you?
I don't know, but that's why I said to me it was really
Yeah.
it was really more personal because the actual trainer, he actually stepped in and he like, "That's enough."
Yeah.
And like I said, if he wouldn't have stepped in, who knows what would have happened. After that, like I said, I just kept my distance from and I think some other people have had issues with this same individual before.
Okay. Yeah. So other people had issues with her before, but currently when you were there, were you the only one having that issue? Like the only one getting called out for being
Mhm.
picked on? Yeah.
Yeah.
Besides that one trainer stepping in saying that's enough, how did the other wrestlers like handle that when they saw you getting called out like that? Did they
I
say
think
anything to you afterwards?
Yeah, well, Imma be honest, like, some of the wrestlers who were, like, friends of mine, they know about it, and they still talk to me about it to this day because, but to be honest with you, I'm coming into their world.
Yep.
So, it's kinda like a lotta time people are gonna side with especially when they think somebody's in a position that can kinda take them to the next level, you know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yep.
So, I think some of them probably kind of took her side on it, you know?
Yeah.
And that's why, like I said, I didn't let the guy who tried to pull it get away with it. But like I said, with the female, I just kind of, cause like I said again, I'm a man at the end of the day, and I was raised better than that. But I say this and I share this story because not everybody got a man like me. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
some people would have took it to another level, and that's why I tell people like it's just not good to pick with people. It's not
Yeah.
because look, everybody ain't to be played with.
Yeah. How long did this go on for?
To me, it was very brief because, like I said, I'm one of them people where, like, when I see trouble, I kind of go the other way. I'm more of a no nonsense type of person, you know.
Yep.
But I'm not
Did you
ashamed to like share my story or anything because, like I said, I see how when people kind of pick with people, how it can lead to people getting hurt,
Yeah.
and so yeah, that's why I say I encourage people just it don't hurt to be kind to people.
Exactly. When she made that statement, like, "I'm gonna make you quit," and she was one of the trainers that we know of, what did she try to do to make you quit?
Well, she kept trying to, I guess, put it like this, kept trying to kind of like embarrass me in front of other people. And I think another thing was like, I don't really know whatever she had in mind, but I wasn't trying to find out. You
So,
know,
it was just more like she's just trying to play with your mental. state. I was thinking like she was trying to like gonna make you run laps or do burpees or something like, make it physical, like make it, part of their training, but it wasn't part of their training. It was just all a mental
Yeah.
attack.
And like I said, like to me, I'm not being funny, but again, you never know where people come from. And so that's why, like I said, to be honest with you, like I'm not whining about it, not complaining about it. But I say this because again, when you're dealing with people, you never know what people are at mentally, physically, and it's not good to really pick with people.
Yeah. And at that time, you mentioned this a few times. Where were you mentally at this time? Was there anything else going on in your life that made this harder to take?
Well, for me, it was more so like me I was a little bit kind of like upset about my voice being like that because I didn't know
Okay.
what was going on. And so I had a lot of stress coming from work and stuff like that. So to me, wrestling was kind of like supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
And it was to a certain degree, but like I said, I just kept my distance, because I didn't want to make things worse than it was. And then on top of that, I'm gonna add a little more context to the situation. There was another fellow black wrestler who had an issue with another female wrestler, and he ended up kind of getting blackballed from the industry. You know, I'm talking about like he was very talented or whatever. And, I don't know what his relationship or whatever happened between the two, but I know he got
Yep.
blackballed. And
Okay.
so, kind of like after that, we was all trying to play it safe anyway.
Yeah. Did you ever stand up to her, like say this is enough?
Well, I did when I told her ain't nobody gonna make me quit. But I think that's when she kind of like got in the ring and then, started trying to drill me or whatever, and then got in my face like, oh yeah, you're gonna hate me. And that's when the trainer kind of stood in and said, no, that's enough. But
Yeah.
see, me, like I said, I'm one of them people that I try to solve problems before they get out of hand.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna lie, I didn't because at the end of the day, you never let nobody disrespect you. But at the same time, again, I'm a man. And so it's kind of weird to deal with a situation that like that because like I said, if you do anything, you look weak. But if you don't do nothing, you look weak. So I think the best thing to do sometime to be is just walk away from circumstances like that.
Yeah. How long did you train for? Like, what
I
was the
trained
from
for
start?
like 2 years.
2 years or 3 years? I didn't
It
catch
was
that.
2 years I trained.
2 years. And this started 4 weeks after you started
hmm
training, so you dealt with this for, I don't know, 23 months or so
Well,
of
not so much because what I did was there were certain days where that individual wasn't around.
okay.
So I trained on the day that that person wasn't there.
Okay. So, I think I asked this before, but I'm gonna ask it again. Did you ever have a chance to speak to her about just saying, "Hey, why are you calling me out?" You get to know it or and
Mm-mm.
figure out so the only reason you can think of that she's picking on you is because you weren't good at wrestling at the time.
Like I said, I don't know
Yeah.
what it was, but I know this though. Like me, I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. But
Yep.
then I seen this individual on the podcast. I'm not gonna call
No,
no
that's fine.
names,
Yep, don't call
but
no names.
the person kind of said something just that kind of let me know maybe this is just her personality. But either way, it's not like I said, it's not cool because not everybody would have responded the way that I did.
Yeah. Is there anything you wish you've done different to deal with her besides kinda just letting it go?
Not necessarily because I don't have any. I think I handled it very well, to be honest with you. And I'm gonna just tell you the truth is why I look at it like this because, and I'll just tell anybody this: you never know who people are.
Yep,
You never know where they come from. You never know where they're headed. And so I think for me, I've always learned to respect everybody,
yep,
because sometimes in life, you see people along the way and maybe they start out, maybe they're not that great or whatever, but you never know. They might end up, you know,
yep.
in the same place. Who knows? So
I totally get that you're being respectful, but at the same time, do you think because you said you heard her on a different podcast, do you think maybe if you came up to her and tell her how you're feeling with those comments, you think that could have helped her with that? Maybe she didn't know this was her personality, and sometimes it takes people
well, I think she knows.
she knows.
But
Okay, so
no,
she's
I,
pretty
I
proud
think,
of it?
yeah, like I said, I've seen it and I'm kind of like, oh my God, like, why would you even put that out into the world? So sometimes people just are who they are. But I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. You never know. Sometimes people are one way some years and then people change. So I give, like I said, I give the benefit of the doubt there, but it's just, like I said, it ain't cool because you can't play with everybody, you know?
Yeah. Now, you were in a different situation than most people who experience adult bullying because you could not go to the classes that she was coaching. And some people, they deal with this at work. What's your advice for people that has maybe a coworker or a boss that could be shaming them or saying comments to embarrass them in front of other people? What's your advice to help them get through that?
I would say, I think you probably should approach the person.
Yeah.
I think everything is not like one size fits all. I think it depends on the situation. I think that sometimes you have to use wisdom because not every situation is the same. There are times where you should approach the person. There might be times where you might have to avoid the person.
Yep.
But I think whatever the more peaceable route is, because you see it a lot. Like I don't know how you are with social media, but like a lot of times when I look at social media, I see people bringing relatives up to jobs to fight people and from being bullied at work and stuff like that. And but I'm all for being a peacemaker. Like
Yeah.
I'm not the type of person that really like to sweat the small stuff. But there are times you have to stand up to people, and
Yeah.
who knows, maybe we'll cross paths again. I don't know. But I just
What would you do if you saw her this time? If you crossed paths, what would you do?
I probably would just laugh, to be honest, and keep walking. But this is
Uh,
my thing. I don't care how long you've been doing something, whether you are an A-list actor or an A-list wrestler or A-list this and that. You got to be careful how you treat people because
yeah,
once again, you never know how things and tables turn in life. So that's why, like I always say, like me, I always remain calm, cool, collected. And don't get me wrong, I'm very outspoken, but there are times where, like I learned in life, you have to kind of pick and choose your battles. And I only share this experience because again, you never know where people's mind is, and sometimes even the smallest thing sometimes turns into something
yeah.
big where people like get hurt. And so,
So when you say you never know where people's mind is, are you talking about your mind or the person who's picking on you, their mind?
no, I'm
Or do you
talking
mean
about just
both?
this both because okay, let me give you a good example. When I was in elementary school, I remember this young lady. She slapped this boy, and he bust her head open. And a lot of people was kind of like, "Whoa, whoa, that's a girl." But like, the way he looked at it, like, "No, if you put your hands on me," he looking at it like, some people don't care. And so I'm
Yep.
just saying that not everybody is gonna give people the benefit of the doubt. Like, there are people sometimes who respond to those type of situations a little bit different. And that's why I just say that the best thing to do is just to leave people alone. Like if you don't got nothing kind or nice to say to nobody, just leave them alone, you
Yep.
know?
So with your mindset to deal with her, I'm not saying it's right or wrong because I wasn't there. I mean, we all have our own ways to deal with things. Was it working for you mentally? Did it help you out? Were you getting comfort? Like, I'm just gonna
Oh
leave her
yeah, I got
alone. She
like
says what
like
I
like I said, me personally, I don't really sweat the small stuff. See, like my thing is like me. I'm a person that like if I see a problem, I'm gonna nip it in the bud right away. But I will say that it was kind of odd, weird to me because, like I said, I really didn't know how to
yeah.
really handle that. And then it's like, who can you really go to talk to? Because like these are all people who've been doing this much longer than I have. And of course, people are gonna take the side of the person that they think can help them get to where they want to be or whatever.
So when you say, right now you nip things in the butt, but at that time though, you didn't really nip it in the butt because you kind of just let her do this to you. So do you have any regrets? Like, hey, I wish I would have spoken up
Not,
because
I
you
mean,
really didn't deal with it. You
I
kind of
mean,
just let
well,
her.
I guess that's fair, but I guess in that case, I personally don't have any regrets because I didn't really
Okay.
have to worry about it no more.
Yeah.
It was just like a distant, faded memory.
Okay.
But it happened, and that's why
And
like I
you still remember it though. It's still because how many years
look.
ago was this?
This was maybe over 6 years ago.
So you still remember this though. So it did have some effect on you though.
Oh yeah, well, you know what really made me think about it was I remember the wrestler David Otunga. He was talking about how he had a situation with being bullied by another wrestler, and I think that like some people kind of was like, why is he talking about being bullied and this and that? But I think what a lot of people don't realize is that sometimes we see people and we don't see that like these are actual individuals who are regular people
Yep.
who are just working a job like anybody else who experience
Yep.
probably some of the same thing, if not what, because people don't understand what happens behind the scenes. And we
Yeah.
understand that in life, not everybody gets along, not everybody is
Yep.
the best of friends. But my whole take on this is that it just doesn't hurt to be kind to people. You know,
Yeah.
I think again, if a person don't have anything nice to say, why not just leave people alone? And I think in the case of wrestling or things like sports, if you want somebody to get better, I understand that kind of toughness or whatever, but again, there's a
Well,
difference.
yeah,
There's a difference.
criticism is different than, being picked on.
Mhm.
Because criticism is there for you to get better. It's like tough love. You don't want to hear it, but deep down you know it's true and you have to do it. But it's to help you improve. It's telling you I'm gonna get you to quit, calling you names or whatever. That's not gonna get you to improve. That's not criticism. And that's
Yeah. And
person's gone
and like
wrong.
and like I said, it was very kind of annoying, but I think my issue with it is that I just didn't kind of like the arrogance behind it.
Yeah.
I don't like I said, I try not to read too much into things, but when a person's like, "What I made this person quit, and then I did this to this
Yeah.
person," it's like, oh, so like you used to doing this kind of stuff, you know? So,
I would love to know who this is someday and just hear her story because she most likely had this happen to her at some point, or it's either she's trying to do what she saw on TV and trying to like, oh, I want to be like this person. So I'm gonna like she's trying to replicate that, or she experienced it herself. And to her, maybe that was motivation for her to get better at her sport because now, you said that she is doing big things in the industry. So that may have worked for her, but
but
it's
again,
not how but again, it's not how we
again,
treat people.
but
It's
again,
not like
But again, I always say in life, you never know how things are
exactly. Yeah.
gonna go. So it pays to just treat people right because you just look, you never know. Sometimes we think very little of people
Yep.
and somehow, some way,
That's why it'd be really good to hear her story to see why she acts that way. I mean, to be blunt, like, why do you act that way? Obviously, you gotta say it in a nicer way, but you're right.
but
Usually,
like I said,
usually,
it's been other people that have had problems with this individual and that's why like I said,
well,
it's
that's like any other bully out there. It's usually, they're known as like the school bully or whatever. They're known as the workplace bully. It's something is going on with them as well. Like you've been saying, you don't know what they're going through, and um, probably keeping yourself is. I'm not gonna say right or wrong. How would I handle that situation? I don't know because I wasn't there, so I can't say how I would have handled it. But at the same time, it's like gotta have some empathy for them because maybe they are going through hard times, and you just happen to be the guy out there to take it on. And especially if you ain't speaking up, you're the easiest target.
but this is the amazing thing that everybody that know me knows that I'm very outspoken and
Yeah.
I don't
Except for
mean
that one time.
yeah, but it but
That
it's
one
like
time when
but it's like in that situation,
yeah.
I'm just
Yeah, I
I'm
get
just
it.
I'm trying to play it safe because, especially when you're dealing with a
Well, you didn't
female
wanna get kicked out either, right? You
well
didn't wanna get kicked out.
well, it wasn't just about getting kicked out, it's just like I said, I've learned, especially when you're dealing with situations like those, you have to be careful because sometimes the narrative gets flipped.
Yep.
Imma just leave it at that, you know what I'm saying?
Yep, I know if it's guy versus women bullying, if it's I
Yeah.
hear you. I hear you
Yeah,
on that.
so I'm just like, let her win, let her win. It's all good.
Yes, that's a good point because basically what you're saying is just walk away from it, walk away. You change your training times up. But, um and hopefully someday she figures it out. So, Wade, any other last minute advice you wanna say to people who may be dealing with adult bullying, especially if it's like coming from somebody who is your boss and it's not criticism, it's just they're just there to shame you in front of people. Any advice you would have for them? Because sometimes we just can't walking away in a job 'cause
Yeah.
I say jobs right now 'cause that's where most adult bullying takes place, according to the CDC. It's where most people hear it. It's you can't just get up and walk away. It's a job.
Yeah,
What
I now
what's your advice?
and I know that to be true because look, I've been blessed to have, did everything that I wanted to do from, working in the funeral business to pro wrestling and to filmmaking. And you see things even the more like stuff that you would expect children to do. You honestly right, you see it in adults. But what I would tell anybody is this: is like if somebody making you feel uncomfortable, I see nothing wrong with pulling the person to the side and maybe trying to talk to them if that's the kind of person you can do that with, because there are
Mhm.
sometimes people that you can do that with, and
Yep.
then there are times where it's like it's really not really much you can do. But I think the best thing to really be able to do is just to at least try to talk to the person if you can, and then if that doesn't work, you might have to talk to whoever's in charge or whatever, or
Yeah.
you might just have to say, you know what, I'm out.
Yeah, that's kind of the reality of what a lot of people do right now. It's just easier to walk away from it. At the same time, you could also maybe find out who is a close acquaintance of that person that might be easier to talk to. Not saying that's going to work. That's not guaranteed to work, but you know,
And
sometimes I feel people just don't know they're jerks.
yeah, but
Like
you know what?
they don't know they take it too far. But then some people, I think they do know. That's just, and they're proud of it.
Yeah,
So
and see that
you don't.
and that's why, like I said, I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. But when
Yep.
I saw this person say something on the podcast, I said, "Oh my god!" Like it let me know that that's just their personality. Like I'm not trying to like one thing about me, I don't like to badmouth anybody or talk.
Yep.
That's why I say I would never give out names because to
Yep.
me, if we ever do come in contact with each other again, you know, maybe privately you can discuss this with people, but it
Yep.
just it just depends on where they are in life too, because not everybody is approachable.
Yep, and I love your respectful approach. So I was just trying to figure out both sides, like, wait, what was she going through? And you're right. I mean, for that situation, I think the way you handled it was correct. I mean, you're making a documentary with that company, so you had more than one thing on the line. You just can't, you're shooting a documentary and you pro wrestling to help, for some fun activities. So it's like you had a lot on the line. So
But you
I
know
think
what?
how,
I see it as an obstacle though, because like, I think no matter what you do, it's gonna always be something in your way.
yeah,
And so and again, I feel like when a person is like trying to bully somebody, I think that people have to realize that's a very dangerous, again, thing to do because not everybody is going to respond in a graceful way. Some people are gonna fight fire with fire. And like I said, it don't always end well. So I just encourage everybody, just it don't hurt to be kind to somebody.
yeah,
It's too many people done lost their lives over senselessness. And I say that because I again I'm a funeral service worker and I care about people. I love people. I don't wish anything bad on anybody, but if we want this world to truly become a better place, we have to learn how to treat one another as human beings. And if people just learn to treat each other right, I think we'll get a lot further than we are.
exactly. Wade, I want to thank you for coming on my podcast today. If people want to get a hold of you, connect with you on social media, are they able to do that?
Sure, you can find me on Facebook, Wade Simmons, on Instagram, Wade Jedi 99, and feel free to reach out. I'll talk to anybody. I like people.
Awesome. And I'll put
Hopefully,
those
they like
links.
me.
That's awesome. Yeah, you seem like a very friendly guy. So, and people listening, you can find those links in the description of the podcast, or if you're watching on YouTube, you'll saw go across the stream. Wade, thanks again for coming on today.
All right, thank you.